It wasn't just a house. It was the place where I lost my first tooth, where I learned to ride a bike on the cracked driveway, where my dad built a treehouse before his back gave out, where my mom tucked me in every night. Same blanket, same lullaby. It was home, the kind that lives inside you, even when you move far away. So when I got the call, I thought it was a joke. "Maya," my cousin said over the phone, hesitant. "I didn't want you to hear it from someone else. Your mom sold the house." I felt like the air got knocked out of my chest. "What house?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Your old place," she said softly. "She sold it last week. Said she needed the money." My voice cracked. "Why?" She paused. "Then to pay for Claire's wedding." Claire. My sister, the golden one. Of course. A million thoughts crashed into each other in my head. The kitchen with the blue tile my mom insisted on. The marks on the hallway wall tracking our heights each year. The dent in the banister where Claire once threw a hairbrush at. Me, gone. Sold. For flowers and a 5-tier cake. And that was the moment something inside me shifted. My mother might have sold our home to fund my sister's big day, but she had no idea what I was about to do next. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling like it owed me an explanation. The ceiling was silent, of course, just like my mother had been. No call, no warning. No. "Hey, Maya. I know you have a lot of memories tied to that place, but I need to talk to you." Nothing. I stared at my phone, scrolling through old photos. Birthday cakes in the backyard. Me in braces, standing on the porch in my prom dress. Dad building shelves in the garage, sweat on his forehead, a pencil behind his ear. Claire blowing out candles while I clapped from the side. Every memory burned like a scar now. At 3:17 a.m., I opened Google Maps and typed in the address. The house looked the same. White siding, red shutters, that stubborn magnolia tree that never bloomed properly. But something felt off. I zoomed in and saw a for sale sign knocked over in the grass. A black SUV parked in the driveway. Sold, just like that. When I called my mother the next morning, she didn't answer. I wasn't surprised. I drove across town. It wasn't far, 30 minutes, but the weight of that half hour made it feel like I was crossing time itself. The closer I got, the tighter my chest became. I turned onto my childhood street, passing familiar houses that still looked exactly the same. The corner store, the mailbox with the dented side, the greenhouse with the broken shutters where we used to trick-or-treat every year. Then I saw it. The house. Only. It wasn't mine anymore. There were unfamiliar curtains in the windows. New plants on the porch. Someone had painted the mailbox black. The same mailbox where I once left a note to Santa because we didn't have a chimney. I sat in my car, engine running, and just watched. After about 15 minutes, the front door opened. A young couple stepped out. Early 30s, maybe. He was holding a baby in one arm. She had a diaper bag slung over her shoulder. They looked happy, excited, like this was the beginning of something beautiful. For them, I couldn't breathe. The place where my childhood began was now someone else's future, and all of it, the laughter, the scraped knees, the birthday candles and firefly summers, had been traded for a wedding venue and some custom centerpieces. Claire was getting married in Italy. I remembered that part clearly. A destination wedding, 300 guests, a private villa. My mother had been raving about it the last time we spoke, months ago. Didn't realize she meant to fund it by erasing me, because that's what it felt like, not just losing a house, but being erased. I put the car in gear and drove off, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, and right then, I made myself a promise. If my mother thought she could rewrite our family's history without consequences, she clearly didn't know me as well as she thought. This wasn't over. The next time I heard from my mother, it wasn't a phone call or a text. It was a wedding invitation. A cream-colored envelope with gold trim arrived in my mailbox a week later, addressed in perfect cursive. Ms. Maya Ellis. Inside, a heavy cardstock invitation with pressed florals and embossed letters read, "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Claire Elise Ellis and Nathaniel Pierce Montgomery III. Location, Villa San Pietro, Tuscany, Italy. Date, June 8th. Attire, formal. Reception to follow beneath the olive trees." I nearly laughed. Beneath the olive trees. That's what my childhood memories were worth. Olive trees and imported wine, I called her. This time, she answered. Hi, sweetie, she said, as if we were just picking up where we left off. I didn't waste time. You sold the house, I said. A pause. Then, yes. That was my home, Mom. Our home. I know, she said softly. But Claire's wedding... Claire's wedding? I snapped. You sold 30 years of our lives for a party. A destination wedding with monogrammed napkins and string quartets. It's not just about the party, Maya. It's about family, celebration, future. I felt my stomach churn. What about my future? That house was supposed to be part of my life, something to pass down. You didn't just sell walls, Mom. You sold everything that happened inside them. Her voice hardened. You haven't lived there in years. You moved on. No, I said, my voice steady. I moved out, not on. There's a difference. She sighed, like she was the one exhausted by this. You always make everything about you, she muttered. That's when I realized. This wasn't just about a house. This was about how I'd always been the background character in my family's drama. Claire was the star, the golden girl, the one whose ballet recitals got the camcorder, whose broken hearts got the family dinners, whose successes got the champagne. And me? I got quiet nods and forgotten birthdays, and now I got to watch my childhood home, my anchor, get liquidated for her aisle runner. I won't be attending the wedding, I said. You're being childish, she replied. Cold and sharp. Maybe, I said. But at least I'm not being sold. Off. I hung up. Then I stared at the invitation in my hand for a long moment before tearing it in half. Slowly, deliberately, right through the olive trees. I knew what I had to do. Not to hurt her, not even to hurt Claire, but to finally reclaim the part of myself they kept treating like it didn't exist. If she thought selling the house was the end of the story, she had no idea what I was about to start. 3 days before the wedding, I got an email. Subject line, cease and desist. At first, I thought it was spam. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. A lawyer. My mother's lawyer. The letter accused me of defamation, of damaging the Ellis family name with my post. It demanded I take it down immediately and issue a public apology, or I'd face legal consequences. I almost laughed. My mother had sold my childhood out from under me, and now she was trying to scare me into silence. I forwarded the email to a friend of mine from college, a lawyer herself. She read it, called me, and said, Maya, this is smoke and mirrors. They don't have a case. You told the truth. Truth isn't defamation. Her words gave me strength. So instead of deleting my post, I did something bolder. I updated it. I added a screenshot of the cease and desist letter. Then I wrote, My mother tried to silence me. She sold my home. Then when I told the truth, she hired a lawyer to threaten me. But here's the thing. You can't erase the truth. You can't sue away 30 years of memories, and you can't scare someone who's already lost everything you thought you could take from them. Within hours, the post doubled in reach. It went viral all over again. News outlets started reaching out, asking for interviews. Family drama turned public spectacle. My mother's name, her real name, began trending in local headlines. And that's when the calls started. Not angry ones this time. Begging ones, my mother, Claire, even my aunt who hadn't spoken to me in years. All asking me to please take it down. For the sake of the family. For the sake of Claire's big day. But I didn't. Because it wasn't about Claire's big day anymore. It was about every little day of mine that had been dismissed, ignored, or sold off. And I wanted the world to see it. What none of them knew, though, was that I had one more move left to play. One that would make sure my mother never underestimated me again. The wedding day arrived. I wasn't invited anymore, of course. Not formally, anyway. My invitation had been revoked after the scandal. But that didn't stop me from showing up. Not to the ceremony in Tuscany. No. I didn't have to fly across the ocean to make my point. I showed up online. Because on the morning of Claire's big day, when the villa's olive trees were decorated with fairy lights and the guests were sipping champagne, I released something I'd been working on for weeks. A digital memory archive of our childhood home. Photos, stories, even video clips of Dad fixing the roof, me learning to bake cookies, the old family dog asleep on the porch. Every piece of history that had lived within those walls was now preserved in one place. Not for them, but for me, for anyone who cared to see what was lost. And at the very top of the site, I wrote, "This was our home. It deserved more than to be sold for one day. A wedding lasts hours, a home lasts lifetimes." My mother thought she could trade one for the other. But she forgot. Some things can't be bought. They can only be remembered. The archive spread just as fast as my post had. While Claire walked down the aisle, guests were already whispering, scrolling on their phones, reading the truth behind the luxury around them. My mother later called it sabotage. I called it balance, because she had taken away the house, but she couldn't take away the story. And now that story belonged to me. I never did hear Claire's vows. I never saw the dress in person. I didn't need to. That day, while my family toasted under the Tuscan sun, I sat on a quiet hill near the new oak tree I had planted in honor of my father, laptop on my knees, watching as strangers left messages on the archive page. This reminds me of my own childhood home. Thank you for sharing. You're right, memories matter more than money. Your father would be proud, and for the first time in years I felt peace. They had their wedding. I had my truth, and in the end, truth lasts longer than olive trees and rented villas, because homes can be sold. But roots can be replanted. The post wasn't revenge, it was truth, raw, unfiltered, and painful, but necessary. I sat at my desk for hours, typing and deleting, writing and rewriting. Every sentence felt like peeling back a layer I'd buried under years of family dynamics I was too afraid to question. I began simply, "My mother sold my childhood home to pay for my sister's wedding. I didn't find out until it was already gone." I told the whole story, not just about the house, but about growing up in a family where one daughter was the golden child and the other was the afterthought, where sacrifices were expected from me, but never celebrated, where my mother's love always seemed conditional, especially when it came to Claire. I added photos. The treehouse. Me and Dad painting the garage. Claire in her first communion dress, with me holding her bouquet like a bridesmaid age 9. I explained how the house sale blindsided me, how I'd found out from a cousin, how no one had the decency to call, to ask, to even pretend I mattered in the decision. I ended the post like this. This isn't about real estate. This is about the parts of ourselves we're told are disposable. My childhood home was taken from me without a word, not because my mother had no choice, but because she made one. And now I'm making mine. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. The story spoke for itself. I posted it late at night, thinking maybe a few close friends would read it. Maybe I'd get a handful of messages. Maybe it would feel like closure. I had no idea what was coming. By morning, the post had over 30,000 shares. People flooded the comments. Thousands of them. Strangers from around the world telling their own stories. Of favoritism, of betrayal, of watching their family trade them for convenience or tradition, or someone else's spotlight. Some were crying. Some were angry. Many were thanking me, and many asked, what happened next? That was when I realized something. This wasn't just my story anymore. I had struck a nerve, but it wasn't over. I hadn't yet received a call from my mother. Not yet. But when I did, when that call finally came, I already knew what I was going to say, because there are two kinds of inheritances, the kind you're given and the kind you fight for. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just fighting for what I lost. I was fighting for who I had become. The phone rang that evening. It was her. My mother's name lit up on the screen, and for a moment I just stared. My hands trembled. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let her sit in silence the way I had when I first learned the truth, but I answered. Her voice was sharp, controlled, like she was already rehearsing her lines. "Maya, what have you done?" I leaned back in my chair. "I told the truth. You humiliated this family," she hissed. "Claire is devastated. Do you have any idea how this looks? Days before her wedding. I almost laughed. The irony was too much. Do you have any idea how it looked when you sold our home without telling me? Days after I told you I wanted to fix up the attic one day? Weeks after you promised me Dad's workshop would stay in the family? Silence. Then defensively. It was just a house. No, I snapped. It was my childhood. My foundation. And you traded it for flower arrangements and a villa in Tuscany. Her tone softened, almost pleading. Claire deserves this. She's waited so long, and I didn't. My voice cracked. I waited my whole life for you to choose me. Just once, to put me first, or even second. But you sold everything I had left of Dad for someone who already had everything. She tried again, more desperate now. Maya, you're twisting this. Families make sacrifices. You'll understand one day. I shook my head, tears burning my eyes, though my voice stayed steady. No, Mom. You don't get to call it a sacrifice when you never asked the person being sacrificed. The silence that followed was heavy. A silence that said she knew I was right, but would never admit it. Finally, she muttered, I can't believe you would do this to your sister. I leaned forward, gripping the phone like it was a lifeline. I didn't do anything to Claire. I just refused to let you erase me quietly. You sold the house, but you don't get to sell my voice, too. I hung up before she could answer. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. For years, I had been the quiet daughter, the accommodating one, the one who swallowed disappointment and learned to smile anyway. But not anymore. If my mother thought the post was the end, she was wrong. It was just the beginning. The fallout was immediate. 2 days later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Cousins, aunts, even old neighbors were reaching out. Some were furious at me for airing dirty laundry. Others quietly admitted they admired me for saying what they never could. But the real storm came from Claire. She called me at midnight, her voice shaking with rage. Maya, do you realize what you've done? My wedding is next week. People are whispering, asking if the rumors are true. Guests are canceling because they don't want to support favoritism. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I closed my eyes. You mean humiliating like finding out my home was sold without even a phone call? This isn't about you, she shouted, and there it was, the sentence that had defined my entire childhood. This isn't about you. The birthdays that were canceled because of Claire's dance recitals. The vacations rescheduled for her summer programs. The savings drained for her tuition while I pieced mine together with loans. And now, the house. But this time I didn't shrink. I didn't apologize. Claire, I said calmly, it's always been about you. My whole life. This one time it's about me. And if you can't handle that, maybe you're not as ready for marriage as you think. She gasped like I'd slapped her. You're unbelievable. No, I said, steady as stone. I'm finally believable. To myself, she hung up. I sat in the quiet, heart pounding, but not with fear. With clarity, the truth was out. The damage was done. And for the first time in my life, the damage wasn't mine to carry. What I didn't know yet was how far my mother would go to take back control, and how far I'd be willing to go to stop her. I started with the deed. Not the paper deed itself. That was long gone, signed away in some quiet office while I was 3 cities away. But I wanted to know how it happened. When? For how much? Who signed what? So I went digging. County records are public. A few clicks, a small fee, and suddenly I was staring at the details of the sale of my childhood home like it was a transaction for a used car. Date of sale, 2 months ago. Buyer, a couple from Portland, Oregon. Sale price, just under market value, likely to speed things up. Signed by Marla Ellis, sole owner, my mother. I read the line 3 times. Sole owner. When Dad died, the house passed to her. I remember the day we stood outside the lawyer's office. She cried. I held her hand. We promised we'd keep it. For Dad. For us. I guess promises are easier to forget when you need a venue in Tuscany. Then came the receipts. The house sold for $315,000, a respectable sum in our neighborhood. Not flashy, but solid. Claire's wedding budget? I already knew from the family group chat I rarely replied to, the one they forgot to remove me from. that she wanted everything from designer gowns to imported tulips flown in from Amsterdam. That price tag? Over $250,000, $250,000. For one day I wanted to be sick, but I wasn't shocked. Claire had always gotten what she wanted, even when what she wanted came at someone else's expense. I clicked through the buyer's information. There they were, a young couple, early 30s, software engineer and nurse, moving from the city to start a family. A lump caught in my throat. It should have been me. That house. I dreamed of raising my own children there. Fixing the loose step on the porch, hanging new photos in the hallway where mine used to be, repainting the same old kitchen that still smelled like Sunday morning pancakes and lemon cleaning spray. And now all of that was gone. But instead of rage, I felt something else. Clarity. If my family could erase 30 years of love with a down payment and a wedding dress, then I could make just as bold a move. One that wouldn't just honor what was lost, but expose what was taken. They weren't going to get away with rewriting history. I wasn't just the girl who lost her house anymore. I was the woman who was about to make them remember every brick they threw away. Didn't tell anyone what I was planning. Not yet, not Claire. Not my mother. Not even my cousin, who had unknowingly lit the fuse. I needed time and information. I started by reaching out to the buyers, the young couple who now lived where my entire life used to take place. I found them through social media, their names listed in the county registry. A quick search pulled up their housewarming post, a selfie in front of the porch, smiling like they'd just stepped into a dream. I didn't blame them. I messaged the wife, her name was Lena, and introduced myself. Hi, Lena. I know this is strange. My name's Maya. I grew up in the house you just bought. I don't want anything from you. I just wanted to ask if I could stop by sometime. I'd love to see it one last time if you're comfortable with that. She replied within an hour. Oh, wow. Of course. That must be so emotional. We'd be happy to have you. We're still unpacking, but come by this weekend? I stared at the message, stunned. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe resistance, maybe silence. But instead, I got grace. The visit was surreal. I stood on the porch where I'd had my first kiss. Walked into the living room where my dad used to fall asleep watching baseball. They'd painted the walls a soft blue, but the bones were the same. The kitchen cabinets still creaked in the same places. The sun still poured through the east window like it had when I was 7 and trying to make pancakes by myself. Lena and her husband, Mark, were kind, welcoming. They made tea, let me wander, asked me questions about the history of the place, the quirks of the old furnace, the weird door that always stuck in winter. And then Lena said something that changed everything. You know, the woman who sold it to us mentioned she was in a rush, said she needed the money for a family emergency. We thought it was something serious. I smiled. Tight. Oh, I'm sure she did, I said. Just not the kind you think? I didn't stay long. Just enough to breathe it in one last time. Enough to say goodbye properly, not just to the house, but to the version of myself that waited for my mother to treat me like I mattered. On my way out, I handed Lena a small box. What's this? She asked. Just a few things from the attic, I said. Photos, notes, little pieces of the house's story. Thought you might want to know the place you're living in wasn't just a building. She looked touched. Thank you. But that wasn't the only story I planned to tell. When I got home, I opened my laptop and created a folder titled Ellis Family Secrets. Inside, I began writing a post. One that would go far beyond a private message, one the whole internet, and maybe even a few wedding guests would see. Because if my mother could erase me from the family's legacy in silence, then I'd be just as loud building my own.